Welcome to episode 3 of writing your novel from start to finish. My name is Ken Broski. I probably should have introduced myself in the first couple of episodes, but I didn't. We're definitely at this point now where we've avoided a bunch of pitfalls as a starting point, right? We've built a protagonist, or at the very least, we've developed a protagonist and we feel kind of comfortable with this protagonist, right? And now we're at a point where we want to start thinking about how to plot out our novel. And what I'm going to recommend you do is a little radical, and it's probably not something that you are necessarily familiar or comfortable with, and that's okay. And I'm going to explain to you exactly why I'm going to propose this kind of radical approach to plotting out your novel. One of the things that a lot of beginning writers do, and intermediate writers do this a lot too, and even some expert writers sometimes do this. What they do is they come up with an idea for a novel, or they come up with an idea for a story, right? And then they open up a Word document, and then they try to plot out their story chapter by chapter. They try to create an outline of their story, okay? And when you create an outline of your story, one of the biggest pitfalls with that kind of process is you lose sight of the big picture, okay? And the big picture in any story, really by and large, 99 times out of 100 is you have a character who is your protagonist, who's trying to accomplish something by the end of the story, right? It's kind of like the classic hero's journey design, where the hero goes on a journey and they encounter a number of specific obstacles that exist on the hero's journey. And when you create a plot outline, sometimes you forget that. Sometimes you lose sight of that. And what happens is it can make it difficult to hold on to your readers, because your readers expect certain things, okay? Just like audiences of movies expect certain things, just like audiences of TV shows expect certain things. We want conflict, right? We want our protagonist to, at the very least, be challenged in a variety of ways, right? We expect at some point, we expect there to be some sort of tension building to some sort of resolution, which we think of as the climax, right? We expect a beginning, a middle, and an end, right? And when you try to plot out a story and you lose sight of these important elements, what happens is you end up with a plot outline that you can't really follow when you're actually writing the story, because the moment you start writing the story, like, your outline is going to get thrown right out the window, because you're going to notice your character is doing something or reacting in a way that's going to take them, branching off in a different direction from what you had planned and all this other stuff, okay? So what I'm suggesting instead is I'm suggesting what I would call the arrow diagram, okay? And if I can, like right here, I'm going to try to insert a drawing of an arrow diagram. Okay, if I don't accomplish it, I apologize. And so what the arrow diagram looks like is literally like an arrow. And what I want you to do is I want you to take a piece of paper and I want you to draw a really long arrow from one side of the paper to the other. On the left side of your arrow, I want you to write the name of your protagonist. So for me, the left side of my arrow is going to say Sam, because he's the protagonist of the novel I'm writing, okay? And at the end, the other end of the arrow, the pointy part of the arrow, I want you to write down the big goal that your protagonist wants to accomplish by the end of the story. So for me, because I'm writing a murder mystery, this is kind of easy. Like, I want Sam to solve the murder. That's going to be his main goal. Like, the whole passion he has, the whole goal of Sam throughout this novel is to solve this murder that he witnessed, okay? For you, it might be a little different, or you might find that, it's something romantic, right? Like, if you're writing a romance, maybe it's the main character wants to marry so-and-so. Maybe if it's a horror novel, if you're writing something scary, a lot of times, you can think of like your main character's goal as basically trying to survive the night, right? Or survive the story. If it's sci-fi, it might be a mingling of all of these different genres, right? It might take place on a spaceship. It might take place in the future. If it's a fantasy novel, it might be something more closely resembling the classic hero's quest. Okay, but what we're doing here is we're just getting the name of our character on one side, okay, and then on the other side we're putting their goal, okay. And now what I want you to do next is I want you to put a bunch of little fletchings, little lines across the page along this arrow. I'm gonna go like this, even though I'm probably not gonna be able to draw it too closely because I'm not good at this kind of thing. And what these fletchings or what these little lines are going to represent is they're going to represent challenges that get in the way of the hero's goal, okay? And this is actually my introduction to you to a concept known as the principles of antagonism, okay? If you want to read a really good craft book that is actually one of the reasons it's really good is because he doesn't spend a lot of time like trying to teach you basics. Instead he tries to just give you concepts and explain why those concepts are important. You should definitely read Robert McKee's story, and I'll put a link down in the description so that you have a link to it. The principle of antagonism is pretty simple. What it means is basically your protagonist is defined by the antagonistic forces that threaten him or her, okay? So in other words, what that means is the antagonistic forces in your story will define your protagonist. They're going to be what makes your protagonist interesting. Remember in the previous video, I told you that there were two main pitfalls when it came to, oh, hi, there's the dog. Oh, how cute. There were two main pitfalls when it comes to your protagonist. One is making like building up this protagonist that's way too interesting and weird and quirky, right? The other main pitfall is a lot of writers forget to challenge their protagonist throughout the story. And so what happens is a lot of stories, and you'll see this in movies, you'll see this in Act 2 in a lot of movies, you'll see this in TV shows too, especially limited series TV shows. There'll be an entire episode where basically everyone is just standing around talking and nothing is like the story is not moving forward, right? And the reason the story is not moving forward is because nothing is challenging the protagonist in that particular episode, okay? And so what you're doing here, when you create these little fletchings along the arrow and you create specific challenges your character is going to be facing, you're making that character, your protagonist, more and more interesting. And at the same time, you're also going to help, it's also going to help the reader root for your character, okay? One of the golden rules of writing really should be this idea that if your character is not being challenged, if your character is comfortable, you need to make them uncomfortable. You need to, the moment you notice, you need to make your character uncomfortable. You can't let them sit around and feel like everything is hunky-dory and everything is going great for chapter after chapter after chapter. And so by creating this arrow diagram, it reminds you that your character needs to encounter these challenges before they reach their goal. Now, another thing to think about, you don't have to come up with this yet, but another thing to think about is as the story progresses, the challenges should get more and more intense. They should get more and more challenging. And you should get to the point where by the time we get to the climax, your protagonist is pretty exhausted. Your protagonist has gone through the ringer, okay? So what I want you to do right now is I want you to look at those little fletchings on your arrow, those lines, and on each line, I want you to write a specific challenge that your protagonist is going to face over the course of your story. They can be big challenges, they can be small challenges. They can be external challenges, and they can be internal challenges as well, okay? So for example, my character Sam, in order to solve the murder, he's going to face a couple of challenges early on. The company that he works for is going to make demands of him. So he's going to have this, he's going to have to go to his day job while he's trying to solve this murder. He's also going to struggle a little bit with with his confidence. That's going to be another struggle that he faces. Another challenge he's going to face is one of the other characters is going to die over the course of the story. Another challenge he's going to face is he's not going to be able to find the identity of the murderer. And so he's going to have to actually infiltrate a group that the murderer might belong to, but he's not sure. So what I'm doing is I'm sort of creating these challenges, and I'm just putting them on this diagram so that I can see exactly how much my character is going to have to go through in order to achieve his goal, okay? And that's why I think the arrow diagram is so helpful, because by the time you're done with this, and like seriously, like more is better than less here. You can always erase one of the fletchings or one of the lines on your arrow diagram when you're actually writing your story. The great thing about this is it gets you in the right mindset, okay? Rather than thinking about like plotting out chapters and moving your character from chapter to chapter, what this arrow diagram does instead is it moves your character from challenge to challenge. And it gets you thinking about how to keep your character motivated, but also how to continually make your character uncomfortable and miserable. I know that sounds kind of weird. And we have pork chop here. Excellent. I know that sounds kind of weird to think about, but we really do want to punish our protagonists. We really do want to make their lives difficult. And the more we make their lives difficult, the more our readers are going to empathize with them, and the more our readers are going to cheer them on, okay? So start here. Create this arrow diagram. Get as many challenges down as you can. And what we're going to do in the fourth video is we're going to talk a little bit more about Act 1 and what you should try to accomplish in the first 30 or so pages of your story. For me, I'm going to focus on mystery because that's what I'm writing, but I'll give you some other ideas for different genres as well. And when we're done with this, once we have Act 1 written, we're going to take a pause. We're going to think about our side characters. We're going to think about little odds and ends. And then we're going to move into Act 2, where a lot of the main challenges occur. And that's when we can refine our arrow diagram. That's when we can start like putting in new stuff or throwing out some stuff. So right now, all we have, rather than a plot outline, is we have this diagram that lets us visualize exactly what we want to get to at the end of our story. And we've also thought about how we're going to challenge our character. So best of luck to you finishing the arrow diagram, and I'll see you when we get to video 4.